Today on Locked On Canadians, in our Friday mailbag, we tackle all kinds of questions. One of them being, will we see first half Slav this year?
You are Locked On Canadians, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canadians. We want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. As you know, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Laura Saab, also known as The Active Stick, and I'm joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host, Ian Boisvert, who I bullied into doing the last episode, and he's still under the weather, but he's a trooper and is doing today's episode. So how excited are you getting for the beginning of the season? Because I got to tell you, I can't contain my excitement.
Yeah, it's getting there. I hope this person's listening. My pal DF. Every year when the AHL season comes around, the schedule gets released, I get a message from DF. Do you want to go see Laval and Hartford? And I'm like, yes, of course. So I will be going to see Laval and Hartford with my friend DF, and that's how I like that. That is, we all have very artificial beginnings and endings to things, just as how we experience them. That is sort of how I start to understand. Okay, the season's coming. Like we're really there. We're close.
We're close. For me, it's as soon as we hit September, that's when I know. You know, the last few years I've been doing the show. As soon as we go up to 5 days a week, it's on. So it is Friday. We have our Friday mailbag, and we have plenty of things to talk about. But do we want to start with maybe the playoff salary cap question?
Yeah, let's do it. This comes to us from longtime listener Paul Branchot, who asks, "Hi kids, what do you think of the league requiring teams to play cap compliant rosters in the playoffs? And how will Tampa and Vegas cheat this requirement?" I think that the second part of that is the whole part of it for me. In that they're going to find ways to cheat this. It's just a matter of when and not if, right? Like someone's going to find a way to game this system. But just from the concept of it, Laura, how do you feel about the league going to these lengths to try to, I guess make 20 of the teams in this league okay with the fact that they're getting just beat by teams that are better than them that happen to be very expensive?
I think honestly, like the whining about it was overblown. I do understand that it is a loophole and it makes people feel like it's unfair, but because it wasn't in the rules, I feel like it was totally, it was annoying for the rest of us, but it was totally they were within their rights to do it. But at the same time, I think it's really funny because, as you just pointed out, they're gonna find another way to cheat it, and so like next CBA, we're gonna be having a whole other conversation. The thing I do legitimately find unfair, though, is that all these new CBA rules are supposed to kick in next year, and they brought a few of them forward, including this one. That's the only part of it that I find is unfair. But like, how are they going to cheat the system? Like that's a really interesting question. How are these teams going to cheat the system? And my big thing is I one day want the Montreal Canadiens to be exploiting these loopholes too. Like if it's going to give you an advantage in the playoffs and it's going to get you closer to a cup, I 100% want the Canadiens to do it. And I have absolutely no reservations about that.
Yeah. We're recording this on the night that the NFL season opens, of course, fittingly with the Philadelphia Eagles, who they have this one play that works every time they get to do it, the tush push, right? And there was the NFL, I believe the Packers were one of the teams behind this, trying to ban this play because we can't stop it, so we have to make it illegal. That's sort of how I feel about all of this, like long-term injured reserve loophole stuff. You guys can all do this, right? Like this isn't something that just Vegas is allowed. It's not like the CBA says everyone has to follow the rules except for the Golden Knights and whoever else we think is our favorite. Like anyone's allowed to do this. So I find a lot of the complaining and hand-wringing about this to be very silly and very, very hockey. Like very, very, no, it's not the integrity of the game. Like who cares? You can all cheat. It's not cheating if you're all allowed to do it.
Yeah, if there's nothing in the rules that says you can't do it, you're not really cheating, right? And so, like, my response to all that is get a better cap guy,
Yeah.
Find a better lawyer.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, the Leafs had Brandon Pridham for years. I think he's still there. And he was responsible for, like, writing parts of the salary cap. and he had their salary cap managed down to like the dollar. You know, it was very important for them to know how that worked. Like I have no empathy for teams who are like, "Oh, why can't we do that?" I'm also mad about it because the year Tampa beat Montreal in the Stanley Cup final, people attributed the Canadiens attributed the complaining to the Canadiens when it was really, I believe, the Hurricanes who complained about it early when they're like, "Oh, we lost to a $115 million lineup." Montreal never complained about how much their roster cost. Never. And it was Carolina who complained, and then it got attributed to Montreal during, Nikita Kucherov's drunken rant at the presser after the Cup final. So that I'm also kind of salty about that, and that most of us were like, "Who cares? Who cares how much they pay their roster? They were just a better team."
Exactly. So, my answer to that is always like, don't get mad, just do the same thing, or find another market inefficiency that you can exploit. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's
move
stick with
on.
Paul Brand show here. Obligatory Leafs dunk. Will Michael Pezzetta be anything more than a prop for the Maple Leafs?
I think he'll be a legitimate player for the Maple Leafs, which says a lot about the Maple Leafs. Like, really, truly. Listen, I wish Pez the best, right? I loved the Pez experience when it was a good experience. But last year, he had no room on this team because he was not able to play the way that this team needed him to play. I think he'll be a regular player or an almost regular player on the Leafs, but that says a lot about the Leafs depth to me, not the other way around.
Yeah. So what we're arguing here is whether or not he is an improvement on Ryan Reeves, right? Like that's what this comes down to. It's why they acquire a guy like him, because he's a cheaper option than Ryan Reeves. Can he be that? And from a locker room vibes guy perspective, yeah, probably. Like from all, reports with Montreal, even though Pezzetta wasn't playing a ton, like he was still a great guy to have around the locker room. He was a gym rat. He was always in the weight room. Like it's a guy that you'd want around. I'm less certain that he's a regular player with Toronto. I almost wonder, like, if they if they have a hard time, getting under the player limit or the cap to start the season, he's gonna go to Toronto. He's gonna go to the Marlies, right? Like that's what the Canadiens were trying to avoid doing all year last year because they thought somebody would claim him, and I bet somebody would if Toronto had to waive him. Someone would pick him up. So it just, it really comes down to how much they think they can actually play him. And I don't know that answer is going to be any different than when he was with Montreal.
Really quick before we move on to our next question, I just want to let everyone know that Ian and I were on the latest episode of Locked On NHL Game Night. I believe the Canadiens is the Wednesday episode this week, and then Predators is the Thursday episode. So check out Locked On NHL Game Night if you want to hear me wax poetic about Nick Suzuki's wedding and other on ice related things as well.
Yeah, and you took your Crosby belief to a Penguins fan, so that was a fun dynamic to see play out because they were not having it, which is very funny. All right, last question here for this segment. This comes to us from Brett Devine. Which player or person associated with the Canadiens would you be most interested in publishing a candid nonfiction book? Would it be a full memoir or a deep dive into a specific period or event in their life? And would it be A, a look behind the curtain, B, an inspirational story, C, a darkly confessional story, or D, purely salacious gossip? Who do you want to read a book from that
I want
is
a book
related to this team?
From Jeff Petrie, for him to contextualize his comments after Dominique Ducharme was fired.
That's a great one. I feel like that could be a Players Tribune. Does the Players Tribune still exist? I feel like that could be a Players Tribune thing.
It does.
I want to read a Marty St. Louis book.
I mean, that's the obvious answer because it would be incredible, right?
It would be awesome. The amount of Martyisms he could pack into 400 pages would be incredible.
Like, honestly, and the thing is, like, he's a Hall of Famer, right? Like, if he comes even close to bringing the Canadiens back to close to the Stanley Cup, everybody's going to be lining up to write his story. So what I'm curious about is who he chooses to make a deal with to write his story. Marty, call us. We'll do it. Yes. But yeah, no, I really like some of the things I want to know, like I want to know some of the beefs behind the scenes or the rumored beefs behind the scenes. Like, right, like did Brendan Gallagher and PK Subban really hate each other? All of that kind of stuff. Like, does Carey Price show personality in the room? He definitely, he had reason not to do it in front of the media. So that my answer is definitely one of those things. Like, I want to know what went on.
Yeah. My second answer, and just because I think he's really funny, a Jeff Gordon book I think would be incredible. I also would want to hear like his fish out of water stories of like his first moments in Montreal trying to learn how to be in Montreal. Like I would love to hear his perspective on that, because I just, first of all, he's brilliantly funny. Like I think he's a very smart guy. And I would kill to read that book.
I feel like the Marty book is like the book that everybody gets like as soon as it gets published. And then the Jeff Gordon book is the book that I take when it's like a rainy day outside. I get a blanket, I open up the Jeff Gordon book, and it really makes my weekend, right?
Yeah, I get the Jeff Gordon audiobook. I think, and he reads it, incredible. I want that. I want that all the time.
And he'll be reading it and they'll be like, I didn't say that, did I?
Yeah.
I must be really smart. Like, that's a very Jeff Gordon thing to do. All right. This episode is a mailbag episode. We're having so much fun, and we have plenty more mailbag questions coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to Sundays. And it makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or you're just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right. One of these days, I really want like Jeff Gordon to send us a mailbag question. Like, I know he's got burner accounts. I don't think he's on Blue Sky, but he's definitely got a burner account on Twitter. Like, I know he's got burner accounts. I know he's got like a public account, and I know he sees stuff. I want him to send us a mailbag question like under a pseudonym.
Yeah, I mean, look, he says I read French a lot better than I speak it, and we speak English, so I think there's a chance. There's more than a chance. Let's keep things moving with our mailbag here. This one does not come to us from Jeff Gordon, but it comes to us from listener Mark Couturier, who says, "Hey guys, love the podcast. Makes my commute so much better each and every morning. Keep up the awesome work." Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. This question relates to Slaf. Do you think there is a real concern that we see first house Slaf again this season? Or do you think the insane work ethic and energy around this team this summer is going to spark him to come out of the gates flying? If he starts on the boy genius line and is not keeping pace with Cole and Nick, how many games does he get before you move Demidov up, assuming Demidov comes up flying? What are your thoughts on this, Laura? Where are you at on first half Slaf and the likelihood of him returning this year?
I want to answer the second part first. The leash will be short, but it will be longer than we think because of the Ivan Demidov acclimatization factor. So they're not just going to put him, like Slaf has a couple of bad games. They're not just going to promote him. They're going to allow him some time. Again, because I know there's a lot of hype, et cetera, et cetera. He's up to the task, but they will, if they're not happy with him 5 games in, I believe they'll give him up to 10 to 15 before they start, really putting Demidov on there. I do think they might experiment with other people just to send a message at first. And then they'll move him up there if that's not working, or if Slaf's not earning his way back onto that spot. Now, with respect to first half Slaf, I think that the last couple of seasons, there was something that clicked for him in that second half. So we just need to unlock what the problem is, or not we, the Canadiens need to unlock what the problem was at the beginning. Was it a situation where he didn't know his assignment? Was it a situation where he was intimidated by the moment? Was it a situation where he was either trying to do too much to be too good and failing spectacularly? I don't think he was lazy. It was not laziness. No. I think there was something that was just not connecting in his brain, right? In his hockey brain. That's what I saw.
Yeah.
So I think whatever it is, he's dedicated enough to try to come back better in the first half. I don't think we see a first half left because it's not just like the excitement and the energy and the competition. I think that something clicked in his brain, and I think he just needs to recreate whatever it is.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think back a lot to what Marty St. Louis said during the playoffs, or maybe it was at the end of the playoffs, when he said, the next season he came back and things were just different. Like everything felt different. He felt like he knew what he needed to do to get to that next step after his first run to the playoffs. I kind of feel I feel like that's going through this locker room naturally, like organically anyway. They're all just so excited to be like, hey, we're not going to be a bad team anymore. We might not make the playoffs this year, although, they probably don't think that, but like we're not going to be a bad team anymore. I think the leash is short with Slafkovsky because I think it's short with everybody, because I think they realize, think of how hard we had to work towards the end of last season just to get in. That was because our start was bad. We started poorly. A lot of that was because we lost Line, but like around the team, you could go ask those guys, and a lot of them would say, I didn't have my best start to the season. I think that's what they're trying to avoid. And that's why like avoiding first half slap is so important, because if only 2/3 of that top line are clicking, you have to figure something out. I don't know if it'll necessarily mean Demidov, you're in the first line now. I almost wonder if they go, hey, put Line up there for a minute, see what that's like,
Yeah. And that would
because
be a legitimate choice to make, especially if he's in shape.
yeah, if he's in shape and he looks like a legitimate scoring option at 5-on-5, yeah, totally. I think that's entirely within the realm of possibility here. All right, let's go to our next question. This is from Henchman1, who asks, who takes on the thankless task of penalty killing with the departures of Savard, Armia, and Dvorak? And should Suzuki be kept off the PK to keep him fresher for offensive uses? What are your
Yes.
thoughts on the penalty kill?
First, you keep Nick Suzuki off it as much as you can help. Just because we saw he was able to take that next step last year. You need that. He needs to not be the one that does everything, and it's so important. So that's my question to that. Like, who does it? Well, we talked a little bit about Arbor Xhekaj and Jaden Struble having to step up, and that would be distinguishing them from each other, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the limiting
spot.
factor between the two of them, is who can penalty kill.
Yes, and also crucially, we didn't really talk about this that much yesterday, but David Reinbacher and Kent Hughes, the language coming from there is all about patience, and so we do think that he will be spending significant amounts of time in Laval. So he's not coming up. Like he's just not in the like. So who takes up that mantle is pretty tough. I think we might have talked a little bit about like Caden Gooley being the type of person to lay his body on the line and block the shots. But it's a tough question. Like, I don't know who's going to be doing that.
Yeah, I think on defense, you're going to see more of Matheson. It's going to be a healthy dose of Matheson, a healthy dose of Gooley, a healthy dose of Carrier. And then I think it's one of those two guys. It's one of Struble or Xhekaj who grabs it. Unless Noah Dobson shows up to camp and can be a penalty killer, because he's not going to play top power play unit. So maybe you can have him as a second pair penalty killer. I don't know how well that works out. Again, at forward, my biggest concern, especially down the middle. Are you rolling out there first unit Jake Evans, second unit Joe Veleno? Like I don't know that that's a legitimate option. So I'm right there with you. Henchman one. I don't know who's going to be doing that at forward. I think Suzuki might want to play penalty kill to prove to Team Canada at the Olympics that he can do it, because if he's being brought in to play on that team, that's the sort of role he's going to play. And at some point you need to save the player from himself.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious how that ends up playing out. Like, does Marty St. Louis go, this will be good for you at the Olympics. You should be playing that role.
The thing is, I think you can't keep, it's not Nick Suzuki making that decision not to play on the power play. It's the rest of the team being like, you need some rest, right?
Yeah.
So Nick Suzuki is going to want to be out there. He's going to want to play. I think with everything that he gives for this organization, to this organization, and to this market, like, I don't think he would forgive the organization if they did not allow him that opportunity to showcase that.
Yeah.
at the very least. But I just want them to manage his minutes in such a way that he's not playing injured for like the last third of the season.
Yep.
That's my big concern. You know, I don't care about his Ironman streak. I care about his health.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
So yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. Should we move on?
We should move on. We should move on to our next segment coming up next.
All right, we're back.
We are back.
Let's finish over our mailbag and limp our way into the final weekend of the off season. This is from Danny Joe on Blue Sky. Flights and hotel are booked to bring my son back to the Bell Center for 3 home games in April. He will explode when I tell him. I hope he's not listening to their show and we're breaking the news to him. Which food establishment should go on my list so he doesn't have me eating at La Cage for 6 nights? Hopefully we can get tickets for the Laval game on the 4th as well. Laura, where are you telling our friends to eat in Montreal while they are visiting? Where are you taking me to eat when I come visit Montreal?
We have to honor, podcaster Emeritus Scott by going to Ma Poule Mouillée first and getting the Portuguese chicken poutine. That's top of the list. We have to go to Bossa for sandwiches. There's one downtown. There's one in Verdun. So Bossa, Bossa for sandwiches. None of these people are paying us, by the way. I don't know if it's legal to like. They could. Yeah.
If you're listening, get in contact with us. We'll figure it out.
Let us know. So that's like, like the sandwiches. That's where I go to get mine. There's a place that is downtown. It's called Shawarmas with a Z at the end. If you like shawarmas, that chain is pretty good. The real authentic Lebanese one is called Shawarma Moods. I don't know if there's one downtown. I usually go to the one in Laval. But yes, you need to be going to these places. In April, I believe like the ice cream places will be back up and running. So Calem, Calem, that's our go-to place for ice cream. There's also Crèmerie de la Rose. If you are looking for specific foods, let us know. We'll keep doing this until April, until you come here. But those are like the most, I feel like when I'm thinking about going to a game, if I'm not going to a pub, that's the kind of thing I want to do, right? Like is have a nice sandwich, it's a giant sandwich, like, and like, those cross-section Instagram sandwiches, that's exactly what they are, but they actually taste good. And like, obviously I have to split it with somebody because it's literally like, I think it's 2 feet long. It's massive. Anyways, check that out. I will keep a list in my head, and I will keep, sorry if we told your son, because I know you guys listen to this podcast while you have dinner.
But also, what a cool way to find out. Congrats, you're going to Montreal. I'm glad we got to break. That's so cool. We got to break that news
for multiple home games, and you're going to Laval.
Yeah, terrific.
To a Rocket game.
Yeah. We don't get to break a lot of news on this show, so that's pretty fun that we get to do that. All right, let's keep things moving here. Alexander Christian writes in, "Hi guys, I hope you're doing well and Ian is feeling better. I'm on the mend, Alexander. Thank you. To this week's question, we're approaching golf tournament time and the unofficial start of the real season. Most hockey players like to golf, but I have to imagine a few don't. What would be the most fun alternative team building charity competition for the team to start the season with? And who do you think would be best at it? Inspired by that game they play at intermission where the players guess the prices of supermarket items, I propose a supermarket sweep style game show. I imagine Arbor Jacques' Costco days may come in handy here. Where are you at? Like, what's a fun sort of competition type team building activity these guys could do that would benefit charity in some sense?
Their insurance would never approve this, but I want to see them do some axe throwing.
Ooh, I wonder if that's... Axe throwing is like, well, it seems dangerous just in saying it. In practice, it's a fairly benign activity. Like, it's not super dangerous. Although I feel like these guys might try to just throw it as hard as they can. And then that becomes dangerous. Like, it's when you get bored at bowling and you guys, you're at one of those bowling alleys where they tell you how fast you're throwing the ball. So then you just decide to throw out your shoulder for the rest of the night, seeing who could throw the ball the fastest. That seems like where that would devolve into.
Yeah. Well, speaking of supermarket sweep, right? Like, I think it's like Guy Fieri's like grocery games or something.
Yeah.
Where they like actually have to cook something. So like maybe like a barbecuing competition. Or
chopped.
Like some sort of
chopped.
Oh my God! Yes,
that's incredible.
Marketing tie-in, amazing. Canadians, call us. We have all kinds of advice for you. But also speaking of that, like a chopped style, like a timed competition. but also like running a food truck. Like, like I know that somewhere on whatever the Food Network is called now, there is a show about competitive food trucks. Like
Yeah.
you got to do, like, you got to run it, like you got to advertise it, you got to,
Yeah.
you got to have a
For
supply
sure.
chain. Like that would be really fun.
Yeah. I love all of those ideas a lot. I would go escape room. Like let's put them in an escape room in groups and see who can in lines, right? They're lines and pairings. That's who goes into an escape room together. So like Boy Genius in an escape room, you have 60 minutes to get out. I think that's really funny. I also go
Um,
back to an idea a friend of mine, Henderly, had, which is to replace the NHL All-Star Game with just the NHL players trying to do Taskmaster, which is a British TV show where they get told to do a lot of really silly tasks that involve lateral thinking. I think that would be really funny because you'll actually start to see if any of these guys know how to read, which,
mhm.
as we've talked with our friend Jay at Locked On Jackets, we don't really think that's true for a lot of them. Like
No.
when the Canadians traded Jordan Harris to Columbus, we were like, we're pretty sure he knows how to read. Like that's a
Yep.
good guy. He knows how to
That's a
read.
guy. That's a guy who can read. Well, I was gonna say, when you had the escape room idea, I was like, we got to make sure Brendan Gallagher's on a line with guys who can read him the clues.
Oh my god, I love all of these men, like truly. But a room with Brendan Gallagher, Josh Anderson, and Jake Evans, you could give them 3 days, and I don't think they're getting out of that room, Laura. Like, we're gonna have to send a search and rescue team in there to get them.
Yeah,
That would be rough.
I know. Literally my favorite thing about Brendan Gallagher is he married a PhD candidate. Like that is
Yeah,
the Canadians lore, like that is gonna go up there forever.
yeah. All right, let's keep things moving. We've got 2 more questions here. This one from Natalia Vamp on YouTube. Did y'all forget to discuss Savvy coming out of retirement to eat a few more pucks in practice, or are y'all going to talk about it tomorrow? We did kind of mention it briefly, but yeah, why was he there as a goalie?
Yeah.
Why did I didn't this are those his goalie pads? Were those
Like,
somebody
where did
else?
he get them? Like,
Yeah, I
does he
was
play
really
goalie in like his other life? I don't know.
I like could you imagine retiring and then showing up back at work for free? Well, let's be honest, that's what he's doing. That's
He's literally
crazy.
doing that. But like
Yeah.
that's what we talked about, because we said yesterday we would get back to that and then we never got back to it. So
Yeah.
like the first day he showed up as like a goalie, and like I thought that was just like a fun thing that he's doing. He's surprising his friends, he misses them, blah blah blah. The next
Yeah.
day he showed up in like coaching gear, like the track suits that the coaches wear. So then we were like, is he like dressing for the job he wants and like angling for a job on the coaching staff? Because I'm pretty sure they're gonna give it to him if he wants it.
Yeah, exactly. The second half of this question also, and I know this is not a very realistic option because he'd have an extremely high price, but have y'all looked at Eriksson Ek yet as a 2C option? Something about him centering Line A and Demidov is quite attractive. That's a very fun player option because he has some offensive upside. Like he can play the other way, put up 50, 60 points, but he seems like a far more reliable defensive center than maybe some of the ones that we've been looking at. Like a Nazem Kadri's more offensively minded. Like I feel like that's a fun mix of like, the defensive aspect that you would get from a third line center, but with a little bit more offensive upside. I think that's exactly the realm that the Canadians would love to live in if they can't get, a Mason McTavish type to play in that second line center role.
Yeah, absolutely. But he's definitely somebody who I think we just never thought he would be available. That's probably why we didn't do it.
Yeah. Minnesota has had like a lot of weird cap things lately, and they just re-signed Marco Rossi not too long ago. So like maybe there's a chance that they get cap strapped and they have to make a move, but I just don't think that they'd want to, for all the reasons Montreal would want that player. The Wild aren't trading him, right? Like it's one of those deals. You have to find a player like that who's a distressed asset in a bad situation, which that's not the case with him in Minnesota. All right. Last question here from Paul Daniel Bierman, who asks, on Price's contract, all the teams are at the floor, per Brian Wild on the Sick podcast with Tony Marinero. So what do we make of that? It's kind of been so that the Habs could benefit, but what does eating the last year mean? A missed opportunity or something else? The fact that every team is at the floor does not change the fact that Price's contract could still be valuable to them, because a lot of those teams that are still at the floor are hoping at some point to do full sell-offs. Ideally, a team like Pittsburgh, right? Pittsburgh is not done bailing water out of the boat. So, like, if you were to trade that contract to a team like Pittsburgh, yes, they're already over the salary cap, already over the floor, but that makes it so that at the end of the year, they can, instead of spending like drunken sailors, like we said, the Canadians said they wouldn't do, they could start to sell like drunken sailors and not worry about, well, we're going to hit we're going to go under the floor, we'll get in trouble. Like that's another aspect of this, that you have to be paying attention to what they're going to try to do later.
Yeah, absolutely. So somebody said like the Canadiens don't need to trade the contract. They need to get under the cap. So they need to get under the cap before the season starts. Is the
Right.
deadline the day before or 2 days before? I can't remember.
I think it's the day before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they can't taper down to Laval this time.
Right. And
So
yes, they don't have to trade that contract, but it is the path of least resistance to them getting under the salary cap. Like that's what we need to keep in mind here. Kay Hughes is not lying to you when he says we don't have to trade it, but he is being a little facetious in that, yes, we don't have to trade it, but of course we would want to. Of course, that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to move a player that we like. We're trying to move a contract that's never going to play hockey again.
That's exactly it. It's like they have to do something. So this seems like, this seems like the most likely thing to do, unless there's a player they want to part with that's going to get them under the cap, but also just under the cap. So it's going to be a bit complicated.
Yeah.
But that's it for our mailbag questions. We want to thank you all. As always, you always send us so much thought-provoking stuff. And I am checking Instagram much more religiously now since our episode from yesterday. One of the questions did come from Instagram. There is no trivia this week. It will be back at some point next week. I know you've all been waiting for it, and we will bring it back as the players come back, as the golf tournament kicks off, all of that. But in the meantime, please make sure you're subscribed to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. We are going back up to 5 days a week next week. We'll have plenty to talk about. We still have to do our Nick Suzuki season review, which we never did.
Oh yeah,
there is that. There are some couple people that we want to talk to. We want to bring on the show, and so all of that is still coming. And then obviously preseason and training camp, and then the team is almost back. So make sure you're subscribed, but also tell your friends. Check out our stuff. Check us out on social media. You can contact us on social media too. We are on TikTok at Locked On Canadiens. We are on Instagram at Locked On Canadiens. We are on Blue Sky at Locked On Canadiens. And our email is lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Please always send us all your stuff, like anything that you like, experiences, stories, pictures of your pets in Habs gear, pictures of your kids in Habs gear. The time you met Arbor Xhekaj and he was really cool. The time you met Mike Matheson and he made you fall in love with him and now you don't hate him anymore. You don't want him traded anymore. All that kind of stuff. You'll find my co-host at Maybe It's Ian. You'll find me at The Active Stick. We want to thank you all for listening, and we'll be back full time next week.